I'm going to show you how to do some very basic yarn weaving on a cardboard loom. The first thing that you'll need is a little piece of cardboard. You can order these pre-made or you can just make them yourself. I'm going to cut 10 small slits on each side, and I do these about 1/4 of an inch apart. And I think it's easiest if you use the back of the scissors like this. Sometimes my kiddos will try to cut with the very tip, and that's really hard to do, but you get more leverage if you work from the back. Okay, so you can see there's 10 slits on each side now. To load the loom, I'm going to put my first piece of yarn about halfway down on the back side, and I'm just going to hold that in place. Now here on the front side, I'm going to tuck it into that slot. I'm going to go all the way down and find the next one and tuck it in there. And then I'm going to just wrap it straight around. So I'm just going around and around and around my loom to go to the second slot. There are different ways to load cardboard looms for weaving, but I find this method to be a lot easier for my younger elementary kiddos. So this is how I do it. Okay, and I just keep going up the back side, tuck it in. Sorry, these little slots were kind of tight. All right, tuck it in each one. And you don't have to do 10. You could do as many or as few as you want, but I think 10 is just a nice round number to start things with. So I do want to go ahead and show you what this looks like on the front and the back side. The front will have 10 straight lines going top to bottom, and the back side, all right, so 10 perfect lines top to bottom. The back side's going to have that little tail that you started with, and we're going to leave enough string to make another tail that goes about halfway. And honestly, I like to tie these in a knot so that way the kids don't get confused and try to start weaving with them. So on day one, usually we just load our looms, and I go person to person, and I just double check each student to make sure that they have their loom loaded correctly. On day two, we actually start weaving, and that's what I want to show you first. Okay, so the way that we set up our yarn is we have baskets that have little holes in them. You can kind of see there's yarn in there, and we just leave a little tail sticking out. And that way all you have to do is come pull an arm's length of yarn and snip it off like that and leave that hanging. It's real easy for the next person to just come up and get their yarn right afterwards. Okay, we're going to start with the left string at the top. I'll put this underneath just one. Now you could just take this and start weaving with it, but I think it works best with the kids to go ahead and tie a knot right here on that first string. Now this is just like if you were tying your shoelaces, you know, that very first step you do, over, under. All right, and pull it tight, and go ahead and just do one more so it holds nice and tight. I think this makes it a little easier at the very end when you're trying to cut this off your loom. It doesn't unravel quite as easily if they're getting tangled up with their string. And I'm going to go ahead and just tuck that to the back side. So now we have that tail as well, and you can even tuck that underneath the string so that way you're not messing with it anymore. And I leave this one right here. Okay, now I also think it's easiest to use, there it is, I lost it for a second, to use a yarn needle whenever we're doing our weaving. You don't have to, but I think it makes it go a little bit faster. Now here's how we load our yarn needles. It's real hard if you just try to poke it right in there. Sometimes it doesn't go right away. So what I like to do is loop it like this and push it through and leave a little tail like that. Now sometimes it takes a few tries, so I tell my kiddos, try 10 times before you ask for help, and then maybe ask a friend before you just immediately tell me you can't do it. Okay, because usually if you try a few times, you can get it. Okay, whenever we're pulling our needle, I'm not going to tie a knot or anything like that. I think that takes up too much time. But anytime we pull our needle, I want you to hold it right down here at the base to pull through. If you don't, and you pull it through here, whoop, see what happens? It just pops right out. So I'm going to load that through again. And remember that we always pull our needle from the base. Okay, so this is weaving. It's basically just one pattern. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And you repeat that over and over and over a million times. So we're going to call this over since it's tied in a knot right there. So our second string, you can either pick it up with your fingers like this, or you can take your needle and scoop it like that. That's going to go under. This one is over. So I keep my needle over. This string is under. So you can pick it up and put your needle under, or if you're good at scooping, you can do that too. All right, so this is under, so that one's over, under, over, under, over, under. I just want you to look at this needle closely, okay? See how it's every other one? I didn't go underneath all of them, and I didn't skip any. Under, I'm sorry, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under the string. All right, once you've done a whole row, go ahead and pull it, pull it, pull it, and then grab that needle at the base so you don't pull your string out. And go ahead and pull your string. Now I want you to be careful. We don't want to do this to where it goes inside out. We want to just gently pull our string to where it's straight. Okay? Now when we get ready to go back, we're just going to continue that over-under pattern. So if we're thinking, all right, this one, the red string is under the blue. It's over the blue, under the blue. We repeat this one and come back over it. All right? So I'm over this string, under, over, under, over. Now it always seems like we get a little bit confused when we get to the end and it's time to circle back, because you do have to go left and then you come back right, back and forth like that. But one way you can test to see if you did it right is this string should hug that one. Think of it like a snake giving it a little hug. Watch this. I love you. And so that way it wraps around. I'm going to show you what happens if you don't do that. Okay, if you don't do that and you accidentally, see right here, my red string is under my blue, and let's say I go under again, just watch what happens whenever I do that. And you'll notice quickly if you didn't hug that last string quite right. All right, so watch what happens. This is the mistake that people make a lot. It just goes, boop, uh-oh, boop, 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 boop. Oh no, what happened? Okay, so always make sure that this string is going to hug around that one. So you can think of it like a little snake giving it a little hug every time. All right, so I'm going to, if it's under, then I go back over it to come back this way. All right, over, under, over, under, over, under. Now, I would like to show you how to change a string. So I'm going to do a few rows and get to the point where I need to change a string. Another thing I want to make sure that you know to do is to comb every time you finish a row. Make sure that they're touching each other and there's no big loops sticking out, and we're not pulling this really, really tight. We don't want those outside strings to bend. We want to try to keep it as straight as we can. All right, so I finished that one under. So this time I'm going to go over with my needle. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And you can even leave your needle there and check the whole thing if you need to. Remember, pull, grab it at the end of your needle so you don't pull your thread out. Hug that last one. I love you. And comb. All right, let's just do that again. You guys can even say the pattern with me as we go. All right, so right here it was under. So now I'm going to go over with my needle. Say it with me. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and pull it through. Remember, grab that needle at the base. Pull, 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 big hug, I love you. And comb it up with your fingers. Okay? I think you're getting the idea of how it goes now. So I'm going to zip through a couple more rows just so I can show you how to get a new string. The cool thing about weaving is that it actually is pretty forgiving. So if you make a mistake with this type of weaving, as long as you're combing tightly like that, you probably won't even notice it after you do a few rows. Another cool thing about weaving is that when you're combing nice and tight like that, all right, watch this. I'm going to just pull my thing right out because it's nice and short now. When you're combing nice and tight, you actually don't even have to tie any knots when you start a new string. So I've got a new string here. Pull it from my basket about an arm's length. Trim it and leave that long for the next person. I'm going to go ahead and load my needle just like that, and I'm just going to keep going like nothing ever happened. Alright, so just pretend like the end of this string is attached to that one. You don't have to tie it on there. Some people like to do that, but I think it makes it look messy inside. So just pretend like those two are connected and just keep going like you would have. So if that one's under, just start back the other way again, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And watch what I do this time. Pull at the base. Pull, 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 but not all the way. I'm going to leave another tail right here. Just comb that up. Leave those tails, and we'll trim those off at the very end. And then you just continue on like nothing ever happened, okay? So I left off under the string. So I go over, give it a nice little hug, like a snake hugging that string. Okay, pull, pull, pull. Remember, pulling at the base of my needle. I keep saying it over and over, but it helps. All right, give it a big hug. I love you. Comb, comb, comb. There we go. And one more time just to lock it in. If this one is under, then my needle goes over, so that way the big string hugs the other string. Got my over-under pattern. Pull the needle at the base. Watch that string give it a hug. I love you. Don't pull too tight. Keep it all nice and gentle. Comb, comb, comb. So it's tight, and that's looking beautiful. So that's basic yarn weaving right there. I've got one that's finished, and I want to show you how to take this off the loom. Now, right here, I tucked these underneath so that way it would look nice and pretty for that first shot. But remember, we left those tails long, so I want to show you what to do with those as well. Alright, so let's pretend like I did the whole entire thing. I'm right here at the very end. I just finished my last one. Now you can leave it like this, or if you want to, you can tie it in a knot. I just tuck it back under that blue one and just tie it in a little knot there. I think that helps just not to lose it, so it doesn't all come unraveled whenever we get ready to tie it off. Okay? Now, remember that back side that had the little knot? Alright, first we're going to just cut off the knot. We don't want that ugly thing anymore. Okay, now we're going to just put our scissors right through the middle and snip, snip, snip all those. Alright, so we've got something like this. Don't pull this off the loom right away. It'll be a lot easier if you leave it in place and tie your knots just two at a time, okay? So I've got it back like it was. This is where it finished. You remember that string? Okay. I'm going to pop out two of these, and I'm going to tie these together just like if I was tying my shoelaces. It's just an over, under, and I'm going to do it one more time this way and tie that together. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with the next two strings. You can hear my phone ringing over there. I think it's my mama calling me. She's asking about Christmas presents. It's Christmas time right now. I'll have to call her back in a minute. Alright, so you can see how I'm just tying each one of those together. But I wanted to show you this so that way I could show you at the very end what to do with that little string that's still hanging off there. Okay, so I'm just tying two at a time. Now this last one, you've got that string right there. If you tied a knot, you could cut it off nice and short, but sometimes that gets a little tricky. So what I like to do is just go ahead and throw this in here and just tie it in a knot with these. So I've got two on one side and one on the other. That's the way I like to do it. There are lots of different ways that you can do art. Okay, so we're going to do this on this side, do the same thing over here, and then all these little tails that were left, you can just trim those off Nice and beautiful. And as you work your fabric, they'll kind of like find their way hidden inside there. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Alright, and then let's just pretend like I already tied that one down there. If you don't like these hanging long, you can always trim them off shorter so that way they're all the same. Or if you want to leave them long and braid them together and make a necklace out of this thing or whatever, you can do that too. Alright, so that is basic yarn weaving for elementary age kiddos.